Well, hello friends, and welcome to CJoy Yoga. Any of my friends who were with last week, you may remember that we did a foot-focused class. That is how I begin every year, at least have for the past 8 years, is a focus on our foundation. And now I want to kind of travel up the body a little bit. So we're going to keep the work of the feet. Some of this is going to be familiar, and you're going to hear some things again. We'll get a chance to, an opportunity to really solidify that footwork as we bring it up into the ankles and start to pay attention to the ankles in some of our poses. This is representing my foot, by the way. I know these aren't ankles. And so that said, a block is going to be handy. If you don't have a block that is not squishy, because we're going to stand on it, maybe there's a book you don't mind standing on, a little bit of a thicker book that's nice and sturdy, or something like that around your house. And you can get away without it, but it's awfully, it's a great learning tool, we'll say. And then have a chair on standby, something with somewhat of a, not high back necessarily, unless you're really tall, but we're going to take the balance out of it a couple of times to really focus on the footwork and then bring balance back in. Okie dokie, artichokes. So I want to start by going into our feet a little bit. So you can come right on up. Feel free to use the chair for this first little bit, but you don't have to, right? And we're going to go ahead and we're just going to lift the right heel as high as we can. Yeah. And bring that down. And then lift the left heel as high as you can. And bring that back down. So I'm trying to get into the soles of my feet and just start to wake them up a little bit. Whether you are just waking up today and moving for the first time, whether you are, had your feet in shoes all dang day. Tom Myers, a body worker, he talks about shoes being sensory deprivation chambers. Makes me laugh, but I believe it to be true. And bring that down. And now we'll start to play a little bit with the front of the leg. So you can go ahead and you can reach your right foot back. I'm going to point my toes and have all 5 toenails come down on the ground, right? And then while I do that, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to let my ankle move a little bit out, bowing out, and then I'm going to move it a little bit to the center. So I'm just going to kind of move right to left and move through the front of that ankle. And if your medial arch is starting to cramp, this is something you probably could do on a regular basis, and that's going to help that, right? And then go ahead and bring that foot down, reach the left foot back, and just notice kind of what way you go. Most of us will bow out, and then you can bow out, but then bring it back through and just rock back and forth a couple of times, allowing the front of that whole, right, the ankle, the side of the ankle, that whole side of it to hopefully start to open. And then let's open up the back side, the Achilles tendon. So this is one place where the chair comes in handy, or a wall. You're going to step your ball mounds up onto the back of that chair as high as you can in your body as you set the heel down on the ground. And then you get to regulate, staying further back is a little less, well, I don't want to say intense because we all have different lengths of Achilles tendon, right? But it's going to bring less intensity for you. Moving forward with not just the nose and the chin, but with the hips is going to bring more intensity in your stretch, right? You're probably going to feel it mostly in the calf. That's where the big sensation often is. But we are starting to move into the Achilles tendon in the back side of that ankle. You can pulse in and out. You can stay forward with stillness and bring that down. And then bring up the left ball mounds. Right? And as you bring those ball mounds up, I'm holding my chair in place because it wants to move a little bit. And then I regulate what's right for my body by moving my hips forward. Some of us might even come up on the ball mounds of the right toe. I'm filming this very early in the morning. My body's like, So I listen to my body. Take another breath there. And go ahead and step on back. And then just take a moment standing on those feet. And just notice what you notice. Any changes that have come in, maybe there's an energetic shift. What words would you attribute to the feeling of your feet against the floor, the sensation you might have? Is it just in the feet and the ankles, or is it traveling up the legs at all? Right, so self-inquiries, always self-study. That's, I think, I don't know what percentage I would put on it, at least 50% of this practice, probably more. So now we're going to use the chair for just a few moments, okay? And then I will let you come off of the chair. We'll let you. But just meaning I don't want you to be so into trying to balance that you don't find the work that we're looking for. Once you find and understand the work, then we'll play with taking hands off the chair and maintaining the balance. So you're going to lift the right heel up. And when you do, probably about 85% of us will put all of the weight in the pinky toe edge. It's just the path of least resistance. It's not bad, it's not wrong, but I'm asking you to put more in the ball mound of the right big toe and feel how that starts to hug the outer leg line in. I don't know if you can see it, but this muscle on me, the pronatus longus, starts to light up, yeah? And then go ahead and bring that down. And one time on the left, just so we feel that. You're going to lift the foot up, let it do what it wants to do, which for most of us is roll to the pinky edge. And then we're going to push down through the ball mound of the big toe. And again, see if you can't get this outer calf muscle, right, to start to fire up. And bring that down. Now, hands on the chair, lift your right heel, push through the ball mounds of the big toes, lift your left heel, push through the ball mounds of the big toes, and get really heavy and feel how when we push through the ball mounds of the big toes, we get the outer ankle, right? That muscle fires up, which supports the outer ankle, the outer knee, and the outer hip. Now keep that, don't lose that today, and then play with the possibility of bringing the hands off of the chair. Hands might come onto the hips, arms might reach up. We've done nothing in the shoulders, so be kind and be gentle if you choose that. And then notice what wants to happen in your feet. I'm falling forward and my right ankle really wants to bow out. It's the weaker of the two for me. In sports, I injured my right ankle a decent amount. And so still to this day, almost 49 now, right? That's my weak ankle. Go ahead and bring the heels down slowly, arms down if the arms were up, and just pause for a moment. And again, notice what sensations you're feeling in your feet, your ankles. I am starting to feel a lot of warmth. I call it fire in that outer leg as we're starting to ask those muscles to work. Actually, let's do that one more time. Use the chair initially. Please, please, please. Just, hit the mic. Play with me on that one, right? You can use a wall. Lift the left heel up first this time and push in the ball mounds of the big toes. Push the right heel, lift the right heel. And again, push through the ball mounds of the big toes. Find the work of the outer ankles and the outer shin, right? We're hugging that outer muscle into the shin bone. And then maybe those hands come off of the chair. And really, if your ankles start to bow out or you start to lose it, keep the hands on the chair for today's purposes, right? Teach the muscles. Let them learn how to turn on. Let them get strong enough to support you. And then start to play with the balance portion of it. And bring it down. And I'm going to take a second because, I'm sorry, I like to break things down. If every time I come up and I practice it, I teach my body to hold my balance with my ankles really bowed out, they're never going to learn that other pattern, that other path, and that can be really, really hard on the ankles, the knees, and the hips, right? So I want to teach my body and train it and then bring the balance into it. Okay, move the chair off to the side. Just another little foot opener. You can always have a blanket roll underneath the heels, but you're going to come on down, fingertips on the ground. If your knees and your hips have flexion, you can come all the way down. If you need to leave them a little higher or work from the edge of a chair, I'll show that in a second, right? And then I'm going to try to roll my knees forward, and I'm going to roll myself back as far as I can towards my heels. Now pay attention to the ankles. Hug the outer ankles in, push through the ball mounds of the big toes, even when you're doing this move, right? So if I were up on a chair, right, I'm just going to mimic being on a chair. I might actually just bring one foot up and pull my toes back, right, and work my foot that way, which is the same line that we're working. And then one more thing, a little more intensity in the front of the ankle would be to bring the knees down, knees together. Well, the knees don't touch, right, but the thighs come in, and the ankles together. And then point your big toes back, hug the outer ankles in, and try to sit down. If your ankles bow out, don't drop so much weight down. Again, train, slowly work with the body and start to train and open these lines so you don't always go into that same pattern. It's not wrong or bad to have one pattern, but if that's all you do and you're 49 years old, right, and that's all you've done, that's where we can get repetitive stress injuries or other things going on. Come on up. Curl the toes under. And why don't we step back for a downward dog briefly here. So just take your time. No pomp and circumstance getting into that one. Just take your time, get in. I would suggest bending the knees initially and lengthening that spine out just as much as you possibly can, right? Hands can be wide as the mat or even wider for that matter. And then maybe you bring one heel down and then the other. Maybe both heels start to reach down. And then, you know, when I get stuck on something in the class, I say it 500 times. I know I do. And yet every time I say it, my body's like, oh yeah, that's right. Push through the ball mounds of the big toes, right? Get a little lighter in your pinky toes and see if that doesn't start to fire up that outer ankle / outer shin line. And this was last week's work, but if you can see your inner heels, move your inner heels back until they're hiding behind your ankles. And that is about the femur bone in the socket. Take another breath. And then we're going to go ahead and we're going to walk our hands back to our feet. We'll end up at the back of the mat. Hands on the hips. Reach the chest forward. Come halfway up. Pause. You can even use your hands on your hips here. Push your hips back as you reach your chest forward. As the two pieces move in opposite directions, the spine lengthens. Some of us, we could use a little bit of those low ribs gently moving up. And then come all the way up, all of us. And here we are here we are at standing again. Pause. Has your relationship to the floor changed at all? Sensation-wise, what's happening in that lower part of the body? And then grab your block. You're going to put it under your right foot first. Right? And again, a book or something thick and heavy would work as well. For the blocks, for most of us, our full foot doesn't reach, doesn't come onto the click, click, pause. You might want the chair next to you. I'm going to use the chair because I want to find what I want to happen in my ankles and my feet and then play with balance. When I bring my right foot up, I let my toes hang off because it's more important to let my heel ground down than the toes. It's not that the toes aren't important at all, but the heel is a little more important in this instance. I'm in what I call funky Tadasana, right? My feet are on different levels, but I still have them parallel like train tracks, yada, 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 yada. And then from there, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put my hand on the chair and I'm going to lift my left heel up until my hips are parallel and neutral. And then maintaining that, right? I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to flex my left foot until I'm standing in Tadasana, but my left foot is on the air. Yeah, makes sense so far? Now, I could talk about the glute. That'll probably be next week's classes, but I want you to really focus on pushing more through the ball mound of the right big toe. And as you do, and as that outer ankle and that outer leg hug in, that starts to help that outer leg line, right? And then from there, we're going to maybe lift that left knee. Actually, let this be an opportunity if you want to play with balance and take your hand off of the chair, hands on the hips, but keep the outer ankle. If you can't keep the outer ankle today, use the chair and hug the outer ankle in. That's the most important piece today, yeah? Be open to it. Maybe that left knee lifts up. I'm going to keep my fingers on because my ankle really wants to bow out in this today. And then from there, I'm going to bring that knee up, trying to get it about the height of my hip joint. Tone the low belly, and then I'm going to move the knee over to the right, not too far. I haven't opened my hips up much today. I'm going to bring that back to center, and I'm going to set that all the way down. You could simply just turn your body. I'm going to stay face to the chair, so I'm going to put my chair on the other side. My left foot comes up, my right foot, they're in Tadasana, they're just on different levels, right? My heel is grounded. And I'm going to lift my right heel until I end up squarely in my left foot. Now, before you even think about lifting the foot or taking the hand off the chair, here's the work of today, right? I'm going to push more in the ball mound of my left toe. And when I do that, and I wish you could be here and see the intricacies in my ankle and my knee, because they are being informed by this, right? As I push through the ball mound of my left toe, I start to support my outer ankle, and I'm not crunching my inner ankle anymore, right? And I'm not overstretching my outer knee and compressing my inner knee anymore. There starts to become an equilibrium. Maybe I lift my left toes. Maybe I lift my hand off the chair. I'm going to leave it down today because when I take balance out of it, right, when I use my hand, I find more in my lower body. And this is how I've started to try to strengthen my left ankle. I've come a long way, but it's definitely still weaker than the other one. Now the knee might come up, might not. Keep everything neutral, nothing changes. The knee moves over to the left, right. Keep that left ball mound down, big toe. Come back through center and go ahead and set that all the way down. You can come off of the block and just pause for a moment and breathe. Now we're going to do one more thing that starts to move up to the hip joint, but with the support of the ankle. So we'll go back to that original side. We'll put our left foot up on the block. Wait, that's incorrect. The right foot up on the block. No, I do want left foot up on the block. Sorry, you guys, my brain is obviously a little slow this morning because I want to work this hip and I don't want it to be next to the chair, right? So stand in Tadasana, funky Tadasana. Lift the right heel, push down through the ball mound of the left big toe, and then bring that knee, that right knee, up. Feel free to use the chair today. Now, without the hips moving, without my left hip moving over to the left, keeping the ball mound of the big toe down, I could say, right? I'm going to move that leg over as far as I can without the hips moving. I like to put my hand on my hip to ensure my hip doesn't move back. And then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to try to internally rotate my femur bone. So I'm not lifting my knee or dropping it, right? I'm just internally rotating the femur, and my leg kind of, my shin bone follows that line, if that makes sense. And then I'm going to drop that knee down, and I'm going to reach the knee back a little bit behind me, right? And I'm going to pull my heel to my buttocks, stretching, pulling the frontal hip point up. And then I'm going to reverse that. So I'm going to reach the knee back a little bit. And then I'm going to try to keep the femur bone internally rotated as I come out to the side. I'm cramping because my body doesn't like this motion. And then I'm going to bring that into what I call fire hydrant, if we were on hands and knees. Bring that back to center. Bring that all the way down. Set up for the other side. So my right foot will be on the block, my left foot off. We want our leg we're working to be away from the chair. Please use the chair. Funky Tadasana. As I lift up, I pause. I get that right ball mound to push down the big toe to hug the outer ankle in, so that this never changes the whole rest of our exercise. Hopefully this doesn't either, but go ahead and bring that left knee out in front of you. This is where I wish I had a slightly taller chair. And then from there, without anything changing through this area, without that ankle bowing out, move that left knee over to the left a little bit. And then internally rotate the femur bone. That one is usually the hardest for most of us. And then from there, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to kind of circle it around, and I'm going to reach that knee. Again, I'm showing you the side view from this one. I reach it back without my hips dropping forward or losing that, my pelvis, right? And I bring my heel to my buttocks the best I can in my body. Now go ahead and we're going to reverse the circle. So you're going to go into internal rotation with that thigh bone and try to bring it out a little bit. And then go into what I call fire hydrant. And then bring that knee forward and go ahead and set that down. Stand off of the block on your mat in Tadasana. And I wonder what's happening in that lower body. So I would not say this is a, quote, well-rounded class in the sense that, oh, we opened up a little bit of everything. It's very, very specific, right? And that's what we're going to do for the first couple of weeks of class. First few weeks of class is really break down some of the different areas of the body and the things that we hope that they do. That way when we get into these other poses, hopefully they're doing that work or we can recall that. So let's do one more move here before we end the class. Regular old a Prosarita Padotnasana, wide-legged pose, right? So go ahead and step your feet out nice and wide on your mat. How wide? If you were to spread your arms out, you'd want your ankles underneath your wrists-ish, right? My toes, my feet are parallel like train tracks. And bring your hands on your hips, move your elbows back. Now, I want you to just notice that if I don't do anything in my feet and I just let them have their way, I get very heavy in my pinky toe edge and I'm bowing out. I'm overstretching my outer ankles here again, right? So I'm going to make sure I push down into the inner edge of my feet without dumping into my arches. That's very hard for me, especially on my right foot, right? So if I don't know about the arch thing, I pull my toes up like we did last week often, and I let my arches lift, right? I find the weight evenly distributed between the three corners of my feet, and then I bring my toes back down and try to maintain that. You can leave the toes up if that helps you find it. And then we're going to start to fold forward, bringing the hands underneath the shoulders. Now, before you go any further, when you folded forward, did your hips move back behind you? We worked with that last week too, right? That's when the weight goes into the heel and you don't put any in the ball mounds. So push into the ball mounds of the big toe, the pinky toe, and the very center of the heel. Make sure those outer ankles aren't bowing out. This is one of the poses where it does it the most usually. And then go ahead and start to fold in any amount with such patience and kindness. Again, we haven't done much in the hips. We haven't done much in the low back. But I want your awareness, rather than being like how far you're getting in and trying to get that depth, quote, in the pose, I want you to notice what's happening in your feet and your ankles. That's the most important part today. Take one more breath. And then walk your hands forward between your under your shoulders. Go ahead and walk the feet in a good deal until they're a little wider than your hips. Turn your feet out to a 45. Begin to squat down if that's available to you, right? And in this one, we roll all into the inner edge and we dump into our arches. So put more in the outer edge of your feet in this posture, right? You're trying to get it distributed evenly. But I always talk about the pinky edge pushing down because that's the part that for 85% of people doesn't happen in this pose. Get nice and long, and then bring those hands down, bring the buttocks down, and come into your seated posture. If you'd prefer to kneel, you're welcome to do that. We will not be here very long. I am going to bring myself up a little bit to try to help my poor little hip that has so many issues. Sit up nice and tall. Now, I don't want you to correct it, but I want you to notice that if you are sitting cross-legged, chances are great that your pinky toe edge, right, is, how do I want to say it? That you're in what's called pronation, right? The pinky edge of the foot, you're on probably on top of the pinky edge of the foot, and the outer ankles are stretching long and the inner ankles are compressing. That's also what's going to be happening in the knees and to a degree in the hips. It's not wrong, I'm just pointing it out. But if you do have knee issues or the knees are sensitive in this posture, you could flex your feet, pulling the pinky toe edge back to the outer knees. And for many people, that will alleviate knee sensitivity in Sukhasana. Bring those hands together in front of the chest. Inhale. Keep the spine long. Exhale, bow the head. Taking a moment of gratitude. And namaste, friends. Yeah, so this week in classes, we'll travel up. We'll still bring that footwork with us from last week. We'll start to go into the ankles and we're approaching knees. We'll bring it up into hips and we'll kind of move on up and check into those areas of the body and see what our patterns are. Patterns are not horrible or anything, but if all you do the majority of your life is one particular pattern, we want to see if we can't find the suppleness and stability that we can move that joint through all of its range of motion, or that we can teach the outer ankles to support a little bit more the platforms above and below, right? Your ankle and feet have a huge, huge impact on your knees. Actually, I'm going to break that down real quick. If you need to get out of here, pause the video. If you get into an injury and you bang your knee, that is an acute injury. It is your knee, no doubt about it. But if it's like all of a sudden you just start to have knee sensitivity, and then they start to get even more cranky, and then you end up with something going on where you're going to see a doctor, not always, but often it comes from the platform above or below. I was taught, and I've talked to PTs about this and other people, that when you have someone come in with, say, a knee injury, I don't look at their knee a lot. I do, but I look at their ankle and their foot, and I look at their hips more than I look at the knee. And more often than not, it's because of a pattern above or below. The same would be true, the low back. It's not usually the low back that it has causing the low back pain, right? It's the hamstrings, it's the position of the upper back, it's the platform above or below. So these babies have everything to do with the health of these babies and these babies, right? So, okay, throwing that out there. Evidently, I've got a lot of lecture in me today. Thank you for bearing with me. Love you guys. Namaste.